Welcome to Hi Rasmus and Friends, Stories Behind the Science, hosted by Hi Rasmus, the leading clinical platform for ABA therapy. Each episode highlights inspiring stories from experts and individuals with unique perspectives. Join us as we explore valuable insights and foster empowerment within the autism community. Welcome back to Hi Rasmus and Friends, Stories Behind the Science. I'm your host, Amy Cook. And in this episode, we're going to chat with Leanne Page, BCBA, author, parent coach, and founder of Parenting with ABA. Leanne will share her story of how Parenting ABA came to life and what it means to bring evidence-based strategies into real homes without the jargon. Whether you're a parent, practitioner, or passionate about practical, compassionate ABA, this episode is full of relatable moments, insight, and heart. Let's dive into the story behind Parenting ABA. Leanne, thank you so much for being here today. How's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so glad we got to have this chat. So, for those who may not know you yet, can you introduce yourself, share a bit about your background and what you do today?
Sure. My name's Leanne Page. I've been a BCBA for a long time, 14 or 15 years. I'd have to do math, which I don't feel like doing this morning. Um, I actually started as a special ed teacher and had never heard of a BCBA, even though I had a graduate degree in educational psychology. Did not know BCBA was a job, but I was very fortunate in my first teaching position that they brought in BCBAs to train the teachers. And so this amazing BCBA came in and trained us and helped so much with the students with autism that I was supporting that I said, I want to be her. So I went back to school and I became her, or my best version of her. Um, so classroom experience, became a BCBA, did clinical experience, and then I became a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
And from there is where Parenting with ABA came into existence and trying to reach more moms when I realized that I kind of had a leg up on this parenting thing with all of these years of schooling and all of these years of experience providing ABA therapy that other moms didn't even know what positive reinforcement meant. And that drove me to build Parenting with ABA about 10 years ago.
That's awesome. So, how old were your children at the time? Like, were they really itty bitties when you
I
were
had an
doing it?
infant. Yes, I had one
Wow.
infant, and now I have two kids. They're 8 and 10. So she'll be 11 in a few days, actually. So it was 10 years ago that Parenting with a Baby started. Um, yeah,
Wow.
I did
So,
this all with babies at home.
yeah, so you mentioned you worked in the schools more as a teacher. You were not a BCBA in the school setting, is that correct?
No, I was a teacher.
You were special ed, and then you
Hmm.
went on clinical, had your babies. And so, how do you think parenting like influenced your perspective as a BCBA?
Oh my goodness. I am very open and honest that I did some terrible parent training when I was younger and just starting out because I have seen BCBAs give these really long behavior plans for parents to follow, and I have been that BCBA who gave, way too many things for do this, do this, do this, do this for these parents who, good gracious, we don't have the bandwidth for that. And especially parents who are dealing with kids with problem behaviors. Oh my word, they don't need to be doing a 14-page behavior plan. So I think it has changed everything for me in realizing that empathy piece honestly was missing in my own practice. And now I care so much and am passionate about giving that, teaching that, promoting that, making sure that all of us are going, oh, wait a minute, slow down. What is this human in front of me, this caregiver, this mom, this dad, this parent, really dealing with every day before I ask them to do more things?
Mhm. So I am kind of curious if there was a defining moment. I know you were going to be a stay-at-home mom. And when did you decide, like, I really want to focus on supporting parents more directly and kind of what inspired the start
Mhm.
of parenting with ABA?
Yes, there is a very clear defining moment. I was involved in a MOPS group, which is called Mothers of Preschoolers, and I love these groups that support parents and moms, especially new moms. And I was going to this group and really looking up to all these moms who were further along in their journey than me. They were amazing women, but they would talk about their kids having problem behavior and say things like, I took all their toys away and they're still hitting. Or they would even say, I spanked my kid and they still didn't behave and things like this. And I just had an infant at the time, so I wasn't dealing with the problem behaviors in my home. But I was going, why are they being so mean to their kids? Why are they punishing all the time? And I have very clear memory of calling my older sister, who her kids are older than mine, and she has always leaned on me of like, what would you do? What does ABA say I should do in these just, typical parenting situations? And so I remember calling her one day and being like, it's just so confusing to me that these
Mhm.
mentor moms are punishing their kids all the time. And I really look up to them, but I just felt very conflicted. And she just was very real with me and said, Leanne, they didn't go to grad school for behavior. How would they know that? And that was my light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, who is going to teach them these things? Like, how can we get just regular moms, neurotypical kids, neurodiverse kids, doesn't matter, these tools of positive reinforcement? How do we get it to them? And I already had a website and a blog that was geared towards BCBAs. And
Mhm.
so flipped that completely and I just started blogging while my baby was napping. Just what is positive reinforcement? Things like tell them what to do instead of what not to do, how to build up better behaviors, these sorts of things. And I just wanted to get it out there for people. And that's where it started, of that aha moment of my sister saying, they didn't go to grad school like you did. You're right.
That's very cool and
Yeah.
very great point on that. Um, so you mentioned that the blog was kind of your initial thing. What were
Mhm.
there any other additional steps for building resources for families early on, or like what kind of came
Yeah.
next after the blog?
Absolutely. And it's so funny to be talking about a blog in 2025 because like that's kind of not really a thing anymore. I mean, I still have one on my website, but you can still scroll the old stuff. But the blog turned into my first book, which I did grab a copy for the people on YouTube watching us. Um, it turned into my first book, and it's very, very short on purpose. So it's almost like blog posts turned into book chapters. So how else can I get this information to moms? Easy to consume content. That's what I want. I buy a lot of parenting books, obviously, since I write them too, and they're so long. They're
Mhm.
so fat. And for me, who I'm doing this both for work and for personal, you'd think I'd be really motivated to read through that, and they're just so tedious. It takes too much time that we do not have as busy moms and busy parents. So making things short and sweet and consumable without the jargon. So I have things like the pre-MAC principle is in here. Do I call it the pre-MAC principle? I do not until the references at the end. So you can say, yes, this is research-based. Here's all your references.
Mhm.
But getting things out to parents in non-jargony ways. Transferred from the blog to my first book. I wrote a second book called Enjoy Parenting that has more practical applications, like how to use behavior tools for independent time at home, for needing to do homework, for morning routines, for um, things like that, going through very specific scenarios so people can flip to what they're dealing with. Okay, here were the tools. How do they look in real life? How do we apply them?
Awesome. Yeah, your first book, my career has shifted a little bit, but early on I was working in the schools, parent training, and then some clinical. So I had several copies of that. And it was truly just such a
Thank
great
you.
foundation. It was so, like you said, it was consumable. It was something where I could say, read a chapter this week and we'll talk about it next week. And they could actually do it. Even if they forgot, they
Oh,
probably would have enough time to read that chapter right
the
before a
chapter's like
meeting.
3 pages long. Yeah.
Yes.
It's very, very short. Thank you. I
So
know a lot of clinics still will reach out to me and buy them in bulk to give to their families. And that means so much to me. I want it to make life easier for all parents, but also for BCBAs. If someone can read this and save you time so that when you show up to do caregiver support sessions, you can jump right in without having to say, let's have a teaching moment of what is a token economy. Hopefully that will help.
absolutely. Well, I want to talk more about your books, but before we get there, let's kind of go back while we have you to hear kind of some of your insights and wisdom. And I'm curious, so like, what are a few of the ABA principles that you wish every parent knew? So I know you've said it
Mhm.
briefly, but just to kind of let everyone know, Leanne works across the board, neurotypical, you name it, everything. So it's a little bit different approach. It's not like she's working predominantly with autism families that might be more familiar with ABA. So some of these families might have never heard of ABA. So what do you wish every parent knew?
One of the biggest things that I I want to say harp on, a nicer word, repeat over and over that I politely tell
Empathize.
people, yes, that I emphasize for people is really telling your child what to do instead. To
Hmm.
stop saying stop all the time, because it is such a knee-jerk reaction for parents to just stop doing that. Stop, 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 stop. But for some reason, in that moment, the child either is not motivated or doesn't remember or doesn't have a skill to do the replacement behavior, right? So just flipping that mindset from discipline and parenting always being about stopping the problems to building up the replacements, to teaching and building up the skill. And so doing that in non-ABA wording of tell them what to do instead, teach them
Absolutely.
what to do instead, is, everything we do in therapy. But for parents, that's not how most of us were raised. That is not the predominant viewpoint in parenting and discipline. So that would be my biggest thing. Flip that perspective to building up the good stuff. And then hopefully we see the problems kind of melt away, right, with our reinforcement schedules.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was actually just telling this to my husband because we left the house. He
Mhm.
had golf on recording and he did not want to know who was on the leaderboard. And we come in and he's,
Mm.
rewinding or whatever. And he tells me, don't look at the TV. What do? I immediately
You
look
look right at it.
because I hear look at the TV. And I said, you're
Yeah.
supposed to tell me, look at me or look
Yes.
here. You're supposed to tell me where to look. Don't say, don't look at the
Yes.
TV. So I'm going to look at it. So
Yes.
can be just the same as children with that one. So
Hmm.
yes, absolutely. Okay. Can you share a real world parenting moment where ABA tools made a big difference? And I'm sure you have many.
Many. For people with little kids, I know for us, when my girls were little, we used the first then all the time and making sure that the then was something they wanted. So simple things like putting your kid in their car seat to go somewhere, that should be simple, right? But if you have a toddler, you have experienced the arched back situation where they don't
Mhm.
want to get in the car, or the tantrum in the Target parking lot when it's we both live in Texas, it's 110 degrees outside and you can't get this kid in the car. So simple things like first, then we always said first buckle, then book. And we had all the little soft, cute books in the car. And my kids loved books. And so that first buckle, then book, it got to where the older child, who was, 4 years old, she was not old, would say it to the little one. And it would just becomes part of your routine. First buckle, then book, instead of get in the car and wrestling, and we've all been there with little kids, that sort of thing. We used a lot of first then just to make a system to lean on, because when you're in that moment, I don't know about you, but I always would get overwhelmed and frazzled and
Mhm.
embarrassed. Like I should know better than having the tantruming child who won't get in the car. I'll start getting red and sweating and having all the emotional reactions. If I have something to lean on, like a first then I know what to say. I know how to reinforce the appropriate behavior. And it's not oh gosh, what am I supposed to do right now? What am I supposed to say? What's the right parenting thing? And all those worries that our minds like to tell us. So, first then was a major part of our lives when our kids were little, for sure.
Awesome. So, how do you approach helping parents make sustainable changes in their home routines? I'm sure there are a lot of parents that say, getting ready in the morning or bedtime routines
Yeah.
can be a frustrating part of the day. So,
Yes.
give us some pointers with that.
I think as BCBAs, we immediately go, well, we need a task analysis and a visual schedule, right? And it's the same thing with parents. I say, well, what are the steps in your routine? Where's the breakdown happening? Are these steps accessible to your child somewhere? And they always say, well, they know the steps. True. They do know the steps if you have taught them and you have worked on them and you do them the same way every single day, but it's not working. So, how do we fix that? How can we make it work better? Make a visual schedule. My kids are 10 and 8, can read. They still like making picture schedules for things because it's fun.
Mhm.
It's more reinforcing. My girls make them on Canva. They like getting on my computer and on mine too. Like, it has to be special, and making their morning routine schedule. That works for a while. And then I find myself repeating the same thing over and over. Did you brush teeth? Did you brush teeth? Did you brush teeth? Did you brush your teeth? And I have to go, okay, that's a cue that something is wrong. And
Mhm.
I say, okay, how can I get you to brush your teeth in the morning? Should we make a new schedule? Should we change the order? And one family I worked with recently had, let's say their kids were 3 and 6 or 7, and they were really struggling with bedtime, and they had a picture schedule. They were already doing so many good things, and they had a really consistent routine. And I said, so you're consistently having meltdowns every night or being consistent. They kept, they're real big. You're consistently having some sort of cue somewhere in this behavior chain that triggers a meltdown. Cut up your visual schedule. Let your kid choose the order, change up the routine. Some sort of using these task analyses and visual schedules are wonderful and super helpful. And then when they aren't working, throw it out the window and start over, but really giving your kid control, giving them that choice. Do we have to read the book first at bedtime, or could we instead um, brush teeth before we read the book, or change up the order of things? And for me, as a very type A personality who likes lists and order and things, I'm like, well, why would you read a book and then get out of bed again and go brush your teeth? I don't know, but if it prevents a meltdown, who cares? Change it up. If your child just wants that control and they enjoy getting to make choices, things that we know work in ABA, let them let them have those choices. And even though we are told over and over and over to be consistent, if we're consistently having problems, it's time to make a change.
That's a great point. Yeah. So yeah, I've seen even just from kind of watching your post, and it's good to hear that even you sometimes have to do a little tune
Oh,
up with the routine schedule and that sort of
all
thing.
the time.
But then I also saw a post recently, and you can correct me or fill in the
Yep.
blanks. But it was basically about a mom having, a very long routine, and I believe you just kind of scrapped the routine, And
Mhm.
so, yeah, sometimes, we think that we need to be consistent in doing all these things, but
Yes.
sometimes we need fresh
And
starts. We need to
simple,
breathe.
simple changes, like I was working with one family and it was the break happened at putting on shoes. And
Okay.
we could sit here and wonder forever, is it a sensory thing? Do they not like the shoes? You know, and I said, where are the shoes? Where are they? It's an environmental thing. Well, they were supposed to grab them out of their room before they came down to the kitchen for breakfast, but they didn't. So they have to go back upstairs and get the shoes. And I said, could we keep the shoes by the back door or in the car? Put them in the car. Get in the car in your socks and put your shoes on the way to school. We can make these simple changes that we get so stuck in our routines. And it's really hard when you're living it because you're like, I only see this routine. I can only see in exactly what's happening every day. But sometimes these tiny changes in our physical environment, move the shoes. Why not? Move where the toothbrush sits on the counter. Get a little magnet where it sticks to the mirror.
Mm,
Move who sits at what chair at the table because we all will end up on our routines and our ruts, right? Just these tiny environmental changes in the home can be enough to change up that routine enough to possibly prevent the problems that have been happening.
absolutely. So we talked about that you're an author of multiple books. I wanted to hear a little bit more about your writing journey, and specifically, I'm curious what your writing process looks like as a BCBA and mom, especially with the first book when they were so little. How
Yeah.
did you have to get out of the house to write, or how did you do that?
So the first one, I have kind of different ones on each one because I was in a different
Yeah.
stage of life. The first one, I only had one child.
Okay.
Um, which was easier than having two. But I wrote during her nap time.
Okay.
We had after lunch, early afternoon nap time, and that's when I would sit down and write and work. And so I had that routine for me. I didn't do it every day. I napped other days, being realistic. But then my second book, I had two littles at home, and I was still a stay-at-home mom, also building my business at the same time, working at home and staying at home at the same time. I got up before my kids. We had them on a super consistent waking up around 7 o'clock every morning. And so I would get up at 6. I can't get up before 6. I know people who get up at 5 and 5:30 and do all these things, but for some reason, if there's a 5 on that clock, I'm going to be angry. So I would get
With
up
you
at
on that
6
one.
and I would maybe get 30 to 45 minutes at a time, which is really not that long, and write. So it was a get up before them, work in chunks of time, and that was my writing time. And then with my third one that just came out this spring, both of my girls are in school, and so it was more of a time management. It was harder for me because
Uh-huh.
I had more time, which is kind of silly. I needed the constraints to make myself turn off email, turn off text messages, really focus in and get things done.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk more about this third book slash journal. I have not gotten my hands on a copy yet, but I have seen some
I need
posts
to
on
send you
social
one.
media. So, your latest book is the Calm and Connected Journal. What inspired it, and how do you hope it helps families?
What inspired it is using ACT in
Mhm.
parent coaching over many years, using ACT in my own life over many years, and seeing how much it helps me as a human and the impact that it's had with my parent coaching clients. And so, how can I, again, get some of these simple ideas or exercises into the hands of moms? And so, that's what it is, a lot of self compassion and ACT research boiled down into quick little bite-size exercises in a journal format. So 5 minutes or less at a time. Again, I am real big on the caregivers don't have time.
Mhm.
I get that. So we still need to take care of ourselves though. So what can we do in 5 minutes or less at a time? And that's where the journal exercises came into play, things that I have used and pulled from all kinds of resources. The reference list is long at the end of this one, too, all amazing um, resources beyond this, but to make it really tangible, specific to parenting.
Love it. And so, would you say you said that it utilizes ACT strategies? Is it ACT strategies more for the moms or for the moms to use on their children or both?
For the moms,
For
really
the
for the
moms.
moms.
Really for the moms.
Really for the moms. Recognizing what we need for ourselves first. That whole fill your own cup first, putting your own oxygen mask first. And I know whenever I hear those expressions, I go, ugh, right?
Mhm.
And whenever I say that I speak at mom groups and things, I say, what is your first reaction when someone says, fill your own cup first? And everybody says, when am I supposed to do that?
Mhm.
When am I supposed to do that? So, how can we do that in 5 minutes or less a day? And it actually helps. It actually works. Things like noticing your thoughts. That's, a little intro to ACT diffusion, right? Some cognitive diffusion, but without calling it cognitive diffusion, because nobody wants to read that and do a journal called that. That doesn't make sense to us. But if it's fill your own cup first, what does that mean? That means recognize when those mom guilt thoughts are creeping in, and then what can you do about it? Some ACT practices like name that tune where you sing that thought, or you picture it on a movie poster, or you just notice it. I notice I'm having the thought that. So
Mhm.
breaking that out into like one of those a day. That's your whole journal exercise for the day is to practice. I notice I'm having the thought that. And then the next morning, I do it in the morning. The next morning, when you open it up, you reflect on that. Did you notice your thoughts? How did it make you feel? Did
Mhm.
your shoulders come down? Did you breathe a little easier? Did you feel that distancing? So, just trying to take these really high level things. Cognitive diffusion is really amazing, but really high level and a lot to consume for a busy mom or dad or caregiver. And so, making it a little more accessible.
So, would you say that the book is intended more to complete independently, or do you have groups like maybe your MOPS group or other groups where caregivers could, do it independently but kind of reflect together on it?
That is my hope. And what I do have some people who have purchased in bulk, again, reach out to get a discount on that. I can help with that. But to do as a group, so it is 100% both. Independently, it is broken down into 8 weeks. You guys, I haven't even finished the whole thing for my second time through in order think I jump around. It doesn't have to be 8 weeks. You can take a year to do the weeks of practices, but just a way to give it some structure and organization. Or it could absolutely be a book club kind of situation where you can sit and talk about it. I think I cannot think of anything more powerful than bringing in that community piece and
Absolutely.
that connection for moms.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. Being a community manager, that was where my brain was
You
going with
know.
that book. So, Awesome.
I
You
also have had some BCBAs who are using it with their clients.
okay.
So, like I use Act Parent Coaching.
Mhm.
I have been doing this for a long time. I've done a lot of training. But if you haven't, and you just want something to lean on to say, how do I start introducing things like and self-compassion? That's outside of ABA research. There is a ton of research on self-compassion, but that's not our research. So you might not be exposed to it, right? If only there was a way to infuse a little bit of that in your caregiver support. This is one way to help make that easier too.
Very cool. Well, I want to talk about some of the challenges and growth that you've had over the years. So, what would you say are some of the most common points of resistance you hear from parents when it comes to using ABA?
That's a great question. I'm like, oh, there's a lot. Um, the first thing, just for reaching parents in general, is they don't know what ABA is,
Yes. Okay.
right? And so even, my business is called Parenting with ABA. All my social handles is Parenting with ABA, and people are like, what is that? Right? And so the first is just making sure people know there is a science of behavior.
Hmm.
Did you even know it existed? Before families get an autism diagnosis, they didn't know that,
Hmm.
right? Before they enter the special ed world, they might not know that. Before they find a general parenting person who teaches about ABA, which I'm one of a few now. I'm not the only one, thank goodness, who
Hmm.
is trying to disseminate more widely. There is a science of behavior, right? We have to teach them that and let them know that is the first thing. And then the second, making sure that they understand that this is about positive reinforcement. It's about skill building. It's about teaching, building up the good things, about reinforcing our kids, giving choices, all the things that are empowering for children are also empowering for the parents. And so, ABA has a unpleasant history, to put it very mildly, and recognizing that, but also making sure that we are this new wave of behavior analysts. We are really pushing that no, we are about skill building and teaching and training and building up.
Hmm. Excellent. Yeah, kind of twofold because I was going to ask,
Yeah,
how many parents have heard of ABA, but then I'm sure some Google and then they might
who
find,
knows?
you're going to find the good, bad, and the ugly. And so then there's got to be that education piece also.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, have you had any moments where something didn't go as planned, yet it still led to growth?
In parenting or in what
With
are
when you were giving like advice, tips,
okay.
strategies, maybe with a
Oh,
client, you
okay.
you know
Yes.
you had some idea and oh, didn't quite work out, but the end
Oh
result,
goodness.
there was still some growth there.
Absolutely. I'm like, I have lots of those. Which category do we want to talk about? Absolutely. Gosh, I feel like I do parent coaching specifically. So I just work with the caregivers and not with the kids. And that's my chosen business model. And it is a lot of trial and error in finding what works for each family. And so we do a lot of things like how do you teach your kid emotional regulation, right? How do we work on that? And parents so often are taught, given, learn that calming strategies are we sit calmly in the corner and we do yoga poses and we take deep breaths and these sorts of things. But really, our research shows that, antecedent exercise can prevent problem behavior, things like this, that big gross motor movements and exercise with your body can be regulating. So I think that there's a lot of trial and error there where you're like, well, let's work on regulation strategies with your child and what's your body saying and what are the physiological cues? And it's almost every family starts with we're just going to try calming things like smell the flower and blow out the birthday candle, breathing. When really, a lot of times, all of our kids and ourselves too need to go outside. They need to run, they need to jump, they need to walk, they need to move. And so I think that we learn that the hard way. I relearn that the hard way with every single family because I do the same thing with my own kids or with my own self of like, I just need to calm down. I'm going to go sit quietly in a dark room. That's going to take me a lot longer to get my heart rate down than if I just would go outside and walk up and down the sidewalk and get some fresh air and move my body. So I feel like that's one lesson that we keep relearning the hard way that regulation strategies, they might be calming. Maybe some people prefer to sit in a dark room and, have nice candle to breathe in and take your yoga breathing and hug a pillow or a stuffed animal or whatever. But there's more options out there. We can also try these other things.
Absolutely. I don't remember who gave me the tip, but I'm almost certain it was not a BCBA or someone in the field, but it went along with what you said about getting outside in the water. When I think it was probably my first was either a baby or toddler, maybe 18 months old, and somebody told me, you know what? Crabs belong in the water or outside. When they get crabby, put them in the bath or take them outside. And
I
it
love that.
worked.
It's
It
true.
worked. I was like,
Oh my
wow, just
gosh.
changing up the environment and they're little
Hmm.
babies and toddlers, they love the water. So
And really translating that as the kids get older, because I know when my kids were little, it was the witching hour. That was the phrase,
mhm,
the general parenting phrase. It's like early evening. It's not quite bedtime, but they're going to be crabby. They're going to be cranky. We were good about going on a walk, put him in the stroller or just the carrier or walk, however, go outside and go on a walk. And we were really good about recognizing the witching hour and going on a walk. Well, we don't have strollers anymore. We're past that phase, but everybody has their cranky hours and realizing we should probably still be doing that. I think we should probably still go on a walk. We play in the backyard a lot. Like, oh, we need to get outside and move. And if I can do it with them, we can also get that piece of connection building and fill their bucket and get them, the non-contingent attention from mom and all of that kind of stuff. Like we knew that stuff when they were babies, and then we had better control over the environment around them. Oh, that still applies. It just looks different.
mhm. So I'm sure you talk with parents at all different journeys, and hopefully you get to be more proactive with some. But with parents being so busy, I'm sure you also don't get to talk to some until they're at a crisis point. And so, what do you
Mhm.
say to that parent that first time when they're just feeling totally overwhelmed and you're thinking, this person is so overwhelmed, I'm not sure what I say is even going to,
Yeah.
fully register when you're at that full emotional capacity.
I
So
mean,
what do those first sessions look like?
you hit the nail on the head because by the time someone reaches out for parent coaching, there's a reason,
Mhm.
right? It'd be great if we could be more proactive, but that's why I try to get other forms out there. But by the time, they've set up calls with me, it's usually we're in crisis mode, and making sure, A, that parent coaching is going to be enough, or if I need to refer out. But with them, it's really more about connection building with the parent. And that's not necessarily what they want to hear from me, but recognizing what's going on in your own body before we can teach your child regulation. What are your cues? What are your calming strategies? What can you do for yourself? And one of the pieces of self compassion is a little exercise from it is simply to say, this is hard in that moment, to recognize that what you're dealing with is hard. It's not you. You're not good. It's not that you're not good enough, that you're not doing your job. No, it's that you're in a really tough situation. If your child's having some sort of problem behavior, parenting in that moment is hard.
Mhm.
And saying, just like I just did, this is hard. I can't tell you how many caregivers immediately have an emotional reaction to that.
Mhm.
Someone just telling them that it's not you. You're in a hard moment, and teaching them to say that out loud or in their head if they don't want to do it out loud in front of their kids in that moment can be a really powerful thing to just take some of the burden off their shoulders. They feel like it's all on them. You caused this. It's your parenting. We hear all those kinds of messages online or from our own environments, and just recognizing that this is hard.
Mhm.
Because, like you said, they're not going to compute all these behavioral things if they're too dysregulated as an adult. We're not even going to get to where we can build up their child's replacement behavior, take some data to try to figure out the function, all of that. It's too hard if we can't get the parent to calm themselves first. How can we help the parent get regulated? So that is honestly where we start, is noticing your own cues. What are your strategies that work for you? And of course, if we can get all of this in a visual format and modeling it for their kids, we're already teaching it through
Mhm.
modeling, but also with the goal of getting the parent to regulate themselves so that we can get to the harder stuff of, functions of behavior and replacement behaviors and this sort of thing.
Awesome. So yeah, it sounds like a little bit of the starting with the acceptance and commitment
Yes.
therapy, getting to that part with empathy, and
Yes.
wonderful.
And just recognize that. It's so funny because some families that I work with, I'm like, oh gosh, they're going to think this is too woo-woo talking about this. Um, and I was working with one family and it was a mom and a dad. And the dad, just anytime I started talking about anything mindset, act, self-compassion, I wouldn't even use those words, but as we got into talking about those things, he would you would see him lean back and cross his arms and just give me a look. Even through Zoom, he's just like, you're an idiot. And after some time with them, if I jumped straight into kid behavior, and he'd be like, whoa, 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 when are we going to talk about the feelings and the mindset stuff? He loved it. And so it's recognizing that, okay, just stay the course. You can do it. And the mom, it was work. She was loving it. It was going really well for her to handle her own emotions so that she could calmly respond to her children instead of reacting. But then when I saw the dad really being, whoa, 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 we got to do the feelings stuff. I was like, oh, it works. You just have to get through those hard moments when he's giving me that look, even through Zoom. And I'm like, no, I'm starting to get dysregulated now as the parent coach of, oh my gosh, this man hates me. And how am I going to help his family? And you just got to stay the course.
Absolutely. But I will say, I think with ACT, I could see how some of the feelings, I could see how there could be some pushback. But once you really get into those values, one of the things that I love
Yes.
so much about ACT is that it really can be individualized across
Hmm.
cultures and religions. And
Yes.
it's not, I think in our field, we're doing, much better job with diversity and cultural awareness, but I don't think religion is talked about much. And, I think that there's a little bit more room for that, and it's such an important piece to some families. So if
Yeah.
that is the part of their value system, then that needs to be, part of the intervention, so to speak, and part of the support for that family as well. So,
Yeah.
um,
Looking at them as a human, as a whole
mhm,
person. This is a mom or a dad or a caregiver or a step parent, whatever. This caregiver, a whole human. And what is their community?
mhm,
Some people have all their extended family, maybe living all right together. Some people are, their extended family is their church family. Their religion is what matters to them. And that's one of the things in the CEUs that I teach. I almost always give this handout of like, will this work for my family? Where each parent can say yes or no, basically, but
love
in
that. Yeah.
longer words. So you give them an out basically.
Mhm.
And one of them is community. My community will understand and support this, or my community is not going to understand what's going on here. And that could be a religious alignment too, because if that's their community and their church is telling them one thing, and we come in and tell them something else, well, we're going to have to find a bridge there, or how are they going to keep implementing? How are they going to be consistent with our behavior plans if it doesn't fit their lifestyle and their community support?
Absolutely. Well, that could be a whole nother topic. Maybe we'll
I
do
know.
a podcast episode on that and bring in some BCBAs from all different
Right?
religions. Okay, well,
You need to do that. That's a great idea.
let's talk about if you could just make one small shift with the family today to move towards more peaceful parenting. I don't think anyone can argue with you that doesn't want more peace in their house.
Right.
I certainly could use more
Me
peace.
too. I also could use more peace in my house, just to be clear. I am not coming from a soapbox here. We are all in it together. I honestly think the biggest thing we can do is model it, noticing our own cues first. A few weeks ago, was really angry at one of my kids and was just in full reaction mode. And I know my physiological cues. What does my body do in those moments? I have spent time figuring this out for myself so then I can help teach other parents. I can teach my own children. And for me, I turn red. My chest turns red and then it creeps up my neck and into my face. And so if my chest is turning red and it's warm, you can feel it, I'm like, oh no, this is not good. And recognizing and being able to be like, I'm gonna say something I'm gonna regret. So noticing that cue first and then saying it out loud to the child that I was mad at, I feel my chest getting red. Look, look at it. My body is not okay right now. We are not done talking about this, but I got to do something to calm myself down. I'm going to be, for me, I need fresh air. I recognize that. I'm going to be on the patio. Don't come out there. I need to calm myself down so that we can have a logical discussion about this and work on some problem solving. And my hope in that is, first of all, I did handle it better than I would have, or than I
Mhm.
had at first, I should say. I started to handle it terribly and recognize that I needed to chill out. And noticing those cues in my own body and what does my body need. And so I went outside for a while. I handled it better. Yes, parenting win. But also, I hope that I modeled it for her. And we've had these conversations when we're calm of like, well, what does your body do? And, you don't turn red. She and I don't have the same coloring. So her skin is not going to turn like a lobster red like mine does. So, what does your body tell you? And then what does your body need? Hers isn't going outside. So recognizing she actually likes to be in her room with music really loud. I don't want loud things in that moment, but she does. And so just modeling that for her starts with me. And as parents, none of us want to hear that. It's like, that's a terrible message. I'm so sorry, everyone, that it starts with you, the grown up, but it does. So the biggest thing for a peaceful house, notice your own cues. What does your body need? Give it to your body, but be open and direct about it with your kids so that hopefully they're learning from it. And it's a modeling and a teaching opportunity without effort, without let's sit down and have a talk about feelings. It's, oh gosh, when mom was upset, she did this. So next time I'm upset, I should try the same thing.
I love it. It sounds like so many of the strategies are really putting the focus back on the caregiver
I
some.
know. I'm so sorry, guys.
No, that's okay. But like,
I
it
hate to
just
give
shows
more
with
work.
the self-care and being able to regulate
It's
and model
true.
those behaviors, how important that is. So it's not just all about do this and do that with your kids and it's
Yes.
gonna fix things, but it's really the whole family. So
Yeah.
awesome.
That's exactly right. And like
See,
it
it's like
makes
this
such
is
a
like a
huge
therapeutic
difference.
episode for me. I'm
I know
learning.
you're like, oh, I need to do that. And I'm like, oh, I need to do that better this week because it is
Exactly.
crazy
Exactly.
busy time of year for us. We need to
Yes.
slow it down and figure out what I need first. Yesterday, too, another real life example. I went on a field trip with my daughter. And then right after the field trip, the parents of her class were going into the classroom to do a surprise wedding shower for her teacher. And so
Oh.
we all carpooled to this field trip. We get back to the school, and instead of going inside and going to this wedding shower, I went, I'm going to my house first. And I'm going to eat something with protein in it because I'm getting hangry. And I know I'm going to be snappy with somebody, probably my kid. So it's just recognizing in that moment, my body was like, we got a problem here. And making those actions and those choices. And my daughter is very much like her mother in that she's controlling of things and type A. And she was like, why are you late? Like, where were you? All the other moms were in here. And I said, I was getting hangry and my body needed something healthy to eat, and I didn't have anything on me. So I
Oh.
ran home and I told her what I ate. My healthy choices come really trying to get my kids to, not eat Cheetos. Um, and she was just like, oh, okay, and just modeling that and what do I need? And I really like the phrasing, what does your body need?
Mhm.
Instead of things like, you are angry, you need to calm down.
Mhm.
Because phrases like that can carry shame,
Mhm.
not on purpose. No one's trying to shame themselves or their kid. But if we can focus in on, well, my body feels upset, my body needs protein, my body needs fresh air, that takes some of the shame away and helps our kids to recognize their own physiological cues instead of always having to be like, what are you feeling right now? Which is a much harder concept.
Mhm. Absolutely. So what's next for you in parenting with ABA?
That is a great question. Actually, my daughters are driving this bus at the moment. The Calm and Connected Journal, they are all in on, they like to design things. I let them read through the journal and the earlier mock-ups and the terrible covers that we, didn't use and things like this. And they said, why don't you make a journal for kids?
Oh, I love this.
And then they said, we want to make a journal for kids. So we are working on the Calm and Connected Journal for kids. So the mom can have one and the kid can have one.
That is so
And they
cool.
have hand drawn the graphics and they've uploaded them into Canva. And it's on me to make the lessons, as they say, to go with things like daily reflections and gratitude for kids. And we've done a bunch of stuff like that because obviously I like these things. And so I've bought various journals through the years and done them with them. And I love, as a mom, again, having something to lean on. If we can sit next to each other in their bed or at the table and look down at a book, it's much easier to talk about big things that happened in your day than if you're staring at them in the eyeballs. It's much easier for them to draw something based on a prompt in a book, in a journal, than it is for me to say, who said what to you and how are your friendships and all of these deep, heavy things that I have on almost 11-year-old. Like that's what we're getting to with her. So they're already familiar with the idea and they're further along on their part of the journal than me. So that's our goal for this summer.
That
We're
is so
trying to get it
exciting.
done for like the start of the school year, a back to school launch.
I love it.
That's what's next, a kid version, teaching kids self-compassion and ACT and some of these. And there are some really cool ACT exercises for kids books that do exist out there by great authors. So this will just be our take.
Super, super exciting. Can't wait to see that. So,
Thank
where
you.
can everybody find these fabulous books and find more information about you? Tell us all the things
All
as
the
far as
things.
online.
Parentingwithaba.org.
Okay.
Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, everything Parenting with ABA. So it's all
Okay.
just Parenting with ABA. Just type that into Google and all my different links will come up. Uh, Lots of free stuff for parents that you as a clinician could pass on. Lots of blog posts and things. You could do Parenting with ABA plus whatever you're searching for. You're trying to teach a parent about a token economy, then write plus token economy in your Google search bar. It'll pull something up. You can send that to the parent you're supporting. CEUs for BCBAs to help do this stuff easier and give lots of resources, all kinds of stuff, all about compassionate caregiver support. So
Awesome. So our closing question is always about our slogan. So at Hi Rasmus, we say, focus on the child in front of you. And we like to ask our guests, what does that mean to you? And how do you live that out in your life, Leanne?
I love your slogan and I love this question. The first episode you did of this podcast and you close with that, I was like, yes, I actually said that out loud. Um, to me, it means focus on the child in that moment. Not what they could do yesterday, not what you want them to do tomorrow, not with what you think they should be able to do right now, but what is actually happening in that little human in front of you in this moment. It's hopefully as BCBAs, we're good at shifting and arranging things for whatever's happening in that day, looking at setting events, looking at all the different MOs that change over time. But as a parent, it's easy to be like, you know how to tie your shoes. Why aren't you doing it right this second? And get frustrated, right? Like just do it. But focus on the child in front of you means there's some reason they're not doing it right now. And we can respond with compassion instead of, feeling frustrated. Do you want to tie one and I'll tie the other one? Do you want to tie them in the car? Giving choices and really looking at in that moment. It's different from yesterday. It's different from what you're hoping will happen tomorrow.
Such an important reminder. And I'm going to take that one with me today when they come
I'm
home.
going to try to also take that one with me today.
But it's true. I mean, Friday afternoons are different. I've got a little one that's
Oh,
got a
yeah.
cold right now. So there's all these other
Yes.
variables where we have to sometimes, allow more grace or,
Hmm.
I love that. So definitely.
And right now, this week, as we're recording, it's both of our kids' last week of school. And so, my thought, and my husband's too, because we've talked about this, is that the kids are excited for summer.
Mhm.
But the child in front of me is also sad about not seeing her teacher anymore.
So true.
She's going to have a different teacher next year, is probably a little anxious about what is the routine at home going to look like because we're not going to get up at the same time every day. Every week is a little different with different, all the changes and transitions that come. Whereas in my mind, it's yay, summer. But the child in front of me has way more than that going on in their little mind. And so I love your slogan for that reason of going, oh, wait a minute, focus on the child in front of me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, Leanne. It was truly just a pleasure to hear and learn from all of your wisdom and insights. And thank you, listeners, for listening today. So that's a wrap on this episode of Hi Rasmus and Friends. We loved hearing the story behind parenting ABA and Leanne's heart for bringing practical, compassionate support to families everywhere. Until next time, stay focused and take care. Thanks for joining us on Hi Rasmus and Friends, Stories Behind the Science. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to share inspiring stories and foster empowerment within the autism community. See you next time.